What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another deck profile, and today I have Voiceless Voice. I'm sorry it's taken me a month to do this, but Voiceless Voice didn't get cheap that quickly. In fact, I'm pretty sure I could have picked this up for cheaper than I did if I waited, but if I waited any longer, then you guys wouldn't have had a video for 2, maybe 3 months. So, I'm going to get into it before I ramble. And starting off the deck profile, we have the usual 3 copies of Low. The Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. Sorry, I don't have the full name memorized, but I do have the effect memorized, for the most part. She can be used as the full tribute for the ritual summoning of a light warrior, or no. Is it specifically? I don't know. I just know she can be used as the full tribute for a light monster that would be ritual summoned. And then if she's normal or special summoned, she places a Voiceless Voice continuous spell or trap from your deck face up into your spell and trap zone. And then if you summon a light warrior or dragon ritual monster, you can special summon her from the graveyard. That's all you really need to know about her. She's typically part of your end board, gives you protection on top of just being, a big butt for your opponent to have to get over. 2050 defense is not that easy, and especially with one of the spell cards in the deck, it's even more difficult for them to out anything. Next, we have 3 copies of Saphira, Dragon Queen of the Voiceless Voice. Saphira can send herself from your hand and a copy of a ritual spell from your deck to the graveyard in order to add a ritual monster from your deck to your hand. I believe it's specifically like a light warrior or a dragon ritual monster. And then you can banish her from your graveyard in order to ritual summon a ritual monster using monsters from your hand or field as the tributes. So, you use her, search Skull Guardian, ritual summon ritual summon Skull Guardian using Low. Hello, camera. Focus. Yeah, there we go. Alright. And speaking of Skull Guardian, we're on 2 copies of Skull Guardian, the man, the myth, the legend himself. While you have Low on your field or in your graveyard, he gains 2050 attack, so he doubles his attack stat from 2050 to 4100. And then he is a quick effect, or then he is also an Omni Negate, but on summon, he also searches any Voiceless Voice card, which is very important. Next, I am personally running this as a one-of. This makes my list 41 cards. So if you don't want to run this, you can cut it and have a perfect 40-card list. But I'm also on 1 copy of Saphira, Divine Dragon of the Voiceless Voice. She does everything original Saphira does, just not as a bullet point, choose one of them to activate. So if she's ritual summoned while Low is on your field or in your graveyard, draw 2 cards, discard a card. If a battle involving a light ritual monster happens at any point, or if one of your light ritual monsters battles and is destroyed, something along those lines, you can discard a random card from your opponent's hand, and then during the end phase, you can add a light monster from your graveyard back to your hand. I found her to be really good because she is good recursion for your entire deck. She grabs Low, she can grab the effect monster Saphira, she can grab Skull Guardian, or she could also grab your one of Soravis, the Ancient and Ascended, which I know probably don't need to go over this card, but I'm going to go over it just for the sake of the deck. Soravis is a quick effect in the hand to discard him to negate an effect that targets a card you control, or while he's face up on the field, he has a quick effect to bounce himself back to the hand to negate a special summon of a monster or monsters that your opponent conducts. So he is a 2 points of interaction in one body, and you can summon him just simply by using Low. I just splattered a bunch of cards all over the place. Anyways, That is it for the Voiceless Voice monster lineup. Like I said, if you want to cut the Saphira, you can. I'm running her as a one of because I thought the utility of just having her there was worth it. But it does make that a 41 card list. Doesn't make it any less consistent though, because we do run plenty of one card full combos and plenty of ways to get into low. Speaking of one of those cards, starting us off with the Voiceless Voice spells and traps, we have 3 copies of Barrier of the Voiceless Voice. It says while you control low, your opponent, or while you control low and a light ritual monster, your opponent's monsters can only target light ritual monsters for attacks, and then none of your stuff can be cannot target light monsters with card effects. So your opponent can't target your light monsters with card effects, and only your ritual monsters can be targeted for attacks. So typically your end board is low plus Skull Guardian plus this face up, which makes Skull Guardian a 4100 monster that can't be targeted by your opponent's card effects, and they have to attack it. They can't attack over low, with Skull Guardian being an Omni Negate that you can achieve that full board state off of low by herself. This card also nets you that board state because you can also activate an extra effect to add a Voiceless Voice card from your deck to your hand. It just searches your stuff, provides protection, and is overall a really good card. Next, I'm on 2 copies of Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. It can be used to ritual summon any light ritual warrior or dragon, or just any light ritual monster, I believe. I believe it's that one. I believe it's any light ritual monster can be summoned with this card. And then if a ritual monster is destroyed while it's in your graveyard, you can banish it to, I believe, add the ritual monster back to your hand. I don't use it for that. I haven't tested the deck enough to know if that comes up enough, but it's what you're sending off of Saphira in order to add a ritual monster. And with Blessings of the Voiceless Voice, a one of in the deck, you can always grab this card from your graveyard back to your hand. There's another card that we are running in the deck that also can recur this from your graveyard, but not only can Blessing recur from the graveyard, it can recur it from Banish. And not only does Blessing give you recursion, it also gives you a way to ritual summon on your opponent's turn by saying if a non-ritual monster is special summoned while it's face up on the field, you can then ritual summon a light warrior or dragon ritual monster. And there you go. It gives you a way to ritual summon on both players' turns without having to put too much resources into it. And obviously, if you have this face up with Low and Skull Guardian, and whenever your opponent special summons, if you have Saravis or another light ritual monster in your hand, you can then ritual summon by getting rid of the Low, and then Low's effect in the graveyard will bring her back and place another continuous spell or trap face up in your spell and trap zone, which will most likely be your one of a Radiance of the Voiceless Voice, which has 2 different effects. Shuffle a light ritual monster that is a warrior or a dragon, or a ritual spell from your graveyard, shuffle one of those from your hand or graveyard into the deck, and if you do, add to your hand or special summon a Voiceless Voice monster from your deck. Sorry, kind of hard to read that, but I'm also not reading all of these cards because I've done some testing on the combo lines as opposed to actually how they play within the game. So I don't know everything by heart, but I know the combo lines by heart. And like I said, this is one of your main interaction pieces because of the second effect that says you can target cards your opponent controls up to the number of light ritual monsters you control, destroy this card and those cards that you targeted. Again, you can recur this back with Blessing of the Voiceless Voice very easily. So that is it for the entirety of the Voiceless Voice lineup plus Saravis. So the Voiceless Voice lineup is very minimal. You have so much room for non-engine or other engines that you so choose to play. And I am just running a bunch of really good non-engine. These are the non-engine that I'm about to talk about, and then the hand traps that I'm running. So fairly good and even split down the middle. And we'll begin with our one of Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph Dragon. So, hey, camera, focus. Gotta focus. So Pendulum Graph Dragon has a really cool scale effect that during the end phase you can add a ritual spell from your deck or graveyard back to your hand, and then return this card to the hand. And then while it's face up on the field as a monster, each time your opponent special summons a monster, they take 300 points of burn damage. And then whenever your opponent activates a spell card or an effect of a spell card, so if they activate the field spell for Snake Eye, or the effect of the field spell for Snake Eye, you can place this card face up in your Pendulum Zone, negate the effect, and then special summon an Odd Eyes monster from the extra deck, which we will cover later. But for now, we need to talk about our 3 copies of Diviner of the Herald, which is another one of your 1-card combo lines within the deck, on top of Low. And this can get you into a way to find Low, because this card itself gets you Low from the deck. Whenever it's normal or special summon, you can send a fairy monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard and increase its level by the monster's level by the level of the monster that was sent by its effect. And then if it leaves the field by any means at all, I believe. Yes. Oh no, if it's tributed. If it is tributed, i.e. for a ritual summon, or tributed by effect for something, my bad, you can summon a level 2 or lower fairy monster from your deck, which pun intended, lo and behold, Low is a level 1 fairy monster that you can just summon from the deck by tributing Diviner. And I know Diviner is typically going to be level 2 if he gets hit by Ash Blossom or Valor or Imperm or whatever. But that's why we also run the one of Trias Hierarchica, because if we have open Trias Hierarchica plus Diviner, we can then use Hierarchica in response to any of those hand traps, tribute off the Diviner, summon it, and then in a new chain, Diviner of the Herald, summon Low, go full combo. And that is it for like the generically good stuff that I'm running. Next up, we actually have an engine that I picked up from looking at different deck lists on YouTube and on YGOProDeck.com. And it is the Dogmatica package. It is 1 copy of Dogmatica Maximus plus 3 copies of Nadir's Servant. Nadir's Servant is also a 1-card combo you don't ever want to open with the Maximus, because then all of your Nadirs are dead. However, it's worth it because Nadir by itself grabs you Skull Guardian plus Low plus an additional ritual monster on the board if you so choose, if you open with an additional ritual monster or have the Skull Guardian already. I'll go over exactly how that works, but like I said, Nadir's Servant is a 1-card combo by itself, and Maximus is just there because he's good. And then we're also on 3 copies of pre-preparation of Rites. Sorry about having 3 different rarities. I did want to get a full Prismatic Ultimate Rare playset, but I didn't want to spend the extra money. So instead we have a Super Rare, Secret Rare, and the Prismatic Ultimate Rare. And if you guys don't know what pre-prep does, a simple explanation: add a ritual spell, add a ritual monster that is within the text box of the ritual spell that you add. And there you go. That is all of the non-engine. Now we move to the hand traps for the deck, and starting us off with obviously 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, followed by 3 copies of Effect Veiler. And now this is where things get a little bit more weird, because originally I had Nibiru in the main deck, But seeing as though Fiendsmith kind of makes Nibiru bad to play in the main deck, I swapped it up for 2 copies of Druis Worm and 1 copy of Magnamut, as well as our 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. And specifically, Magnamut has a really good application when going second as well as when going first because of his effect to search for a dragon, which means he can search for our Saphira because she is a dragon, or he can search for our Saphira because she's also a dragon. He can also search for a copy of Saravis, or he could search out or he could search out a Druis Worm. I am grabbing a drink really quick because my voice keeps cracking. But that, however, is it for the main deck. I have been enjoying this list very much. Like I said, if you don't think the one of Ritual Saphira is worth it, you can cut her. You get a 40 card main deck. However, I chose to play her for fun and for, just personal preference on the fact that it gives you a way to draw deeper into your deck and is another ritual monster on top of a dragon monster that synergizes with other cards within the deck. And now we're going to get into the extra deck, starting us off with 2 copies of Dynamondo. Dynamondo on summon can target both a ritual monster in your graveyard and a card on the field, and shuffle both of them back into the deck. And then as a quick effect, he can tribute himself to target a ritual monster in your graveyard and either add it back to your hand or special summon it. Really good card. I don't know the Dynamondo line typically, but I know Dynamondo is here because it gives you a way to summon Skull Guardian on your opponent's turn, as well as be a form of interaction. And then if we continue along, we have 1 copy of IP Masquerena, 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn, because I do not own a copy of SP Little Knight, and I don't know about you, but I'm going to wait until the Megatons to get my SPs. 1 copy of Relinquished Anima, because you can link off your low, make Anima, and proceed to, steal a monster your opponent controls. It also gives you a way to, after going first, if your opponent puts a monster in front of any of the EMZs, you can then use this as a way to break boards. 1 copy of Appaloosa. This is a very cuttable card within the extra deck because we are playing the Unicorn. However, I'm playing it just because I don't really have any better options to put into this slot. And I'm not on Fiendsmith, so it's not that easy to make. In fact, your end boards are typically 2 to 3 bodies. 3 is the maximum, 2 is the minimum, and it is the lowest amount you should be ending on. Unless your opponent, DD Crows your low out of the graveyard or something like that, which I know DD Crow is seeing play, and I should probably be playing DD Crow somewhere, whether it's in the side or the main deck. However, I have different options. I'm also on 1 copy of Secure Gardena that you can usually make by using your 1 copy of Almirage, which is another way to get low off of the board. It also helps trigger your copies of, or your 1 copy of Blessing, because a non-ritual monster is summoned. Because it doesn't have to specifically be summoned, or your opponent doesn't have to summon the non-ritual monster in order for that card to go off. I believe I said it was if an opponent special summons a monster, but no, it's just if a non-ritual monster is summoned, not to your opponent's field specifically. If I did say that earlier in the video, I'm sorry. However, Almirage and Secure Garden, give you ways to trigger that. And then we're on to the Dogmatica portion of our extra deck, starting with 1 copy of Garura, because Garura is what you're going to be sending off into your servant to search Maximus. It draws you an additional card, or it eats an Ash Blossom, but nobody's ashing Garura. And then it's also what you banish off of Maximus in order to special summon it. Then I also have 2 copies of Elder Entity and Tis, because you can send this off of Maximus to force your opponent to send cards from their extract to the graveyard. And not only that, this gives you a way to break the board, so Nadir Servant serves not just as a 1-card full combo going first, but also as a way to break boards while going second. And then we're also on 2 copies of Herald of the Arclight. Herald of the Arclight is a good way to search out anything simply by dumping it off of Diviner or by dumping it off of Maximus. If you dump both copies of this off of Maximus, you get to search both the ritual spell and the Voice ritual spell and a copy of Skull Guardian or any light ritual monster of your choosing if you already have the Skull Guardian, but typically you're going to want the Skull Guardian because he's a big part of your M board. And then one thing I forgot to mention, I mentioned it when I was talking about Odd Eyes Pendulum Graft Dragon, how he summons a Odd Eyes monster from the extra deck. His effects are, I believe, a soft once per turn. So we're on 1 copy of Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon because it can summon back that. So on summon, not synchro summon, but special summon. So you can cheat this thing out of the extra deck and get this bonus or this effect off. So when Meteor Burst is special summon, you can target a monster in your Pendulum Zone and special summon it. This card summons back your Pendulum Graft Dragon that can negate, in theory, that can negate some form of a board breaker in the form of like a Lightning Storm or Feather Duster or whatever. And then I'm on 1 copy of Superstar Slayer Typhon Sky Crisis because, Typhon helps break boards. And I want to give a big shout out to my friend Lord Untimely. I traded him some stuff and I traded him for this. He also he bought some stuff and sent this as part of the payment. And I really appreciate him for getting this to me before today, which it actually came in yesterday. I'm recording this obviously on Friday, and I'm sorry I'm a day late on recording. I know I've fallen off, but it's hard to focus on building decks and doing other things with the channel and trying to get by with the full-time job I'm working and life just as a whole. Anyways, that is the extra deck. Now we'll get into the side deck. Starting us off, we have Speak of the Devil, aka the Fat Rock himself, Nibiru. We have 3 copies of Nibiru here. If you do not want to play Nibiru, and if you would rather play something like DD Crow, you can definitely slot these out for DD Crow. However, I like Nibiru just in the off chance that you run into a deck that isn't playing Fiendsmith, which I know isn't very likely, and if there is a deck that's not playing Fiendsmith, it's Tenpai. But I believe Tenpai can play Fiendsmith and not be hurt at all, because it would give them a way to make Appaloosa or Wave King Caesar as an extra interruption within the battle phase for anything your opponent tries to do. But again, I wouldn't know. Then I have 3 copies of Crossout Designator and 1 copy of Called by the Grave that we can side in over our Dogmatica package. This is exactly enough to side in over the Dogmatica package, because I will be honest, once the Dogmatica package works one time, it will not resolve again. If your opponent sees you go Nadir, dump Garura, add Maximus, banish, then Maximus effect, rip 2, they will either not let Nadir's Servant resolve, or they will not let Maximus resolve. So I'm playing the Called by and Crossout as a way to board out of the Dogmatica engine. And then I'm also on 3 copies of Evenly Matched as a way to break boards while going second. You can definitely board out of some of the hand traps within this deck because some of them are situational. Specifically the Bistials. The Bistials are very situational. They're really only good against anything playing Fiendsmith, which is a lot of decks right now. But board breakers are typically pretty strong within the game at this current moment in time. And evenly matched to me seems like a really good fit for this deck because I don't see any lines for an OTK within this deck. Within my minimal knowledge of the deck so far. Then I'm also on 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier. You can bring this in as a 3 of, you can bring this in as a 1 of, you can bring 2 of it in, you can bring any number of this card in, and you can also bring it in with Crossout as a way to stop your opponent from Barrier calling Ritual. If you're playing specifically against Magical Muskets and they board in Barrier while going first, you can play Crossout as a way to stop them from getting you, or from getting Barrier locked, and this basically skips your turn as well, which is unfortunate. Then I'm also on 1 copy of Tikaboo and 1 copy of Gozen Match, because I was looking at the Snake Eyes matchup and the Tenpai matchup. Tikaboo really hurts Tenpai and Yubel. It in fact hurts a lot of decks. And then Gozen is also very painful for a few decks. It's on my account. Gozen and Tikaboo both hurt a lot of decks right now. However, they are one-ohms. Sorry about that, but as I was saying, Tikaboo and Gozen have a really good matchup into the meta. And not only that, they also match up with this deck, Tikaboo specifically being a way to force your opponent to not be able to use the Fiendsmith engine unless they are playing something like Snake Eyes. So Tikaboo, in order of what it hurts from like the most to the least, is Tenpai, then Yubel, and then Snake Eye. Because Snake Eye is I believe they have multiple different monster types, and then Gozen being attribute based. Our entire deck is 1 attribute, so we can play under Tikaboo and Gozen both being flipped face up, which these you are definitely siding into game 2 if you lose the die roll. So if game 1 you went second, obviously if we lose or if we win, if we win we don't side these in, because then our opponent, has us go second. Or if it's Tenpai, they're making us go first, so we side these in regardless. Or we at least side in Tikaboo against Tenpai. Gozen, you side both, or you side in alongside Tikaboo for Yubel, and you can side in Gozen and Tikaboo both for Snake Eye. However, it's not as good unless you can get both put together on the board as a whole. And that is it for the deck profile. Let me get everything reorganized, and I will be right back. And with that, I want to say thank you guys for watching the video. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. We're on our way to 250 subscribers, and not only that, I'm gonna try my hardest to start uploading more often again. I'm sorry. I don't mean to disappear for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, but I will most likely be back next week with a Voiceless Voice combo guide. And if you guys want to see test hands, I can also do a test hand video afterwards, because there's a lot of combos I would address within the Voiceless Voice combo guide. It would most likely end up being another 30-minute video, and, at least you guys would get a video. And with that, I'll see everybody in the next one. Peace.